Hello, everybody. This is Jimmy, and you're reading with Jimmy. We're reading Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales, poetry. This is The Nun's Priest's Tale, translated by Theodore Morrison. Ready? The Nun's Priest's Tale. Once a poor widow, aging year by year, lived in a tiny cottage that stood near a clump of shade trees rising in a dale, this widow of whom I tell you in my tale. So the narrator, of course, is the nun's priest, and it's being reported, if you remember, by the anonymous narrator, who is one of the pilgrims on this pilgrimage to Canterbury, and they're all telling stories. Since the last day that she had been a wife, had led a very patient, simple life. She had but a few possessions to content her, by thrift and husbandry of what God sent her. She, and 2 daughters, found the means to dine. She had no more than 3 well-fatted swine, as many cows, and 1 sheep, Moll by name. Her bower and hall were black from the heath flame, from the hearth flame, where she had eaten many a slender meal. No dainty morsel did her palate feel, and so sharp sauce was needed with her porridge. Her table was in keeping with her cottage. Excess had never given her disquiet, and her only doctor was a moderate diet, and exercise, and a heart that was contented, and if she did not dance, no gout prevented. No apoplexy had destroyed her head. She never drank wine, whether white or red. She served brown bread and milk, loaves white and black, singed bacon, all this with no sense of lack. And now and then an egg or 2. In short, she was a dairy woman of a sort. She had a yard, and on the inside fenced about with hedges, and an empty ditch without, in which she kept a cock called Chanticleer. In all the realm of crowning he had no peer. His voice was merrier than the merry sound of the church organ grumbling out its ground. Upon a saint's day, stouter was this cock in crowing than the loudest abbey clock. Of astronomy instinctively aware, he kept the sun's hours with celestial care. And so when through the 15 degrees it moved, notice how the narrator is talking about the movement of the sun, and of course Chanticleer is a rooster, that's what a cock is, right? For when each 15 degrees it moved, he crowed so that it couldn't be improved. His comb, like the crenellated castle wall, what's that? It's provide a wall of building with battlements, crenulated, red as a fine coral, stood up and proud and tall. His bill was black, like polished jet it glowed. And yet he was azure-legged and azure-toed, as lilies were his nails, they were so white. Like burnished gold his hue, it shone so bright. This cock had in his princely sway and measure 7 hens to satisfy his every pleasure, who were his sisters and his sweethearts true, each wonderfully like him in her hue. Of whom the fairest feathered throat to see was fair Dame Partlet. Courteous was she, discreet, and always acted debonairly. What's debonair? Describes someone who is courteous, gracious. Now, he's talking about the hens, right? You see how they transition from the widow to the rooster to the cock to the hens. Companionable she bore herself so fairly, since she could boast of being 7 nights old. The heart of Chanticleer was in her hold, as if she had him locked up, every limb. He loved her so, that all was well with him. It was a joy, and when the sun would spring, to hear both of them together sweetly sing, "My love has gone to the country far away." For as I understand it, in that day, the animals and birds could sing and speak. So this may be a story not of the current times, but of the old days. Now, as this cock one morning at daybreak, with each of the 7 hens that he called spouse, sat on his perch inside the widow's house, and next to him fair Dame Partlet in his throat, this Chanticleer produced a hideous note. And he groaned like a man who's having a bad dream. And Partlet, when she heard her husband scream, was aghast, and she said, "Soul of my passion, what ails you that you groan in such a fashion? You're always a sound sleeper. Fie, for shame!" Chanticleer awoke and answered, "Dame, take no offense, I beg you, on this score. I dreamt, by God, that I was in a plight so sore. Just now, my heart still quivers from the fright." He had a bad dream. "Now, God, see that my dream turns out all right, and keep my flesh and body from foul seizure. I dreamed I was strutting in our yard at leisure, when there I saw among the weeds and vines a beast. He was like a hound, and he had designs upon my person, and he would have killed me dead. His coat was not quite yellow and not quite red, and both of his ears and tail were tipped with black, unlike the fur along the sides and back, and he had a small snout and a fiery eye, and a look of fear still makes me almost die. This is what made me groan when I was asleep, I have no doubt." "For shame! Fie on you, you faint heart!" she burst out. "Alas," she said, "by the great God above, now you've lost my heart and all my love. I cannot love a coward, as I'm blessed. Whatever any woman may protest, we all want, could it be so for our part, husbands who are wise and stout of heart. No babbler, no naggard, no fool, nor frightened of every weapon or sharp tool. No braggart either, by God above. How dare you, for shame to your true love, that there is anything that you ever feared? Have you no man's heart when you have a beard? Alas, and can a nightmare set you screaming? God knows there's only vanity in dreaming. Dreams are produced by such unseemly capers, like overeating. They come from stomach vapors, and when a man's humors aren't behaving right, and from excess. This dream you had tonight, it comes straight from the superfluity, an unnecessary or excessively large amount of something, of your red collar, certain as it can be, that causes people terror in their dreams, of darts and arrows, and fire in red streams, and of red beasts for fear that they will bite, of little dogs, or of being in a fight. And as in the humor of melancholy lies, the reason why so many a sleeper cries is for fear of a black bull or a black bear, or that black devils have him by the hair. What's choler? In medieval times, science, one of the 4 bodily humors. The body was a system of 4 humors: black bile, yellow bile, phlegm, and blood. You'll have to read up on your medieval science. For fear of, or that black devils, though other humors also I could go, that visit many a sleeping man with woe, but I can finish as quickly as I can. Cato, that had been thought so wise a man, Cato is Cato the Younger. He's a Roman Stoic philosopher. I want you to note, ladies and gentlemen, how the narrator peppers all these. Now, these are roosters and hens talking, but they're actually talking about historical figures. And remember, the more you know about what's being said, the more you can appreciate this. So the hen, right, Partlet is saying, Cato has been thought so wise a man. Didn't he tell us, put no stock in dreams? Cato said that. Now, good sir, when we fly down from our beams, for God's sakes, go and take a laxative. On my salvation, as I hope to live, I give you good advice and no mere folly. purge both your choler and your melancholy. You mustn't wait or let yourself bog down, and since there is no druggist in this town, I shall myself prescribe for what disturbs your humors, and instruct you in the herbs. And that will be good for you, for I shall find here in our yard herbs of the proper kind. Okay? For purging you, both under and above. Don't let this slip your mind, for God's own love. Yours is a very choleric complexion. And when the sun's in a ascent, my direction is to be aware of those humors that are hot. Avoid the excess of them. And if you should not, I'll bet you a penny, as a true believer, you'll die of ague, or terrestrian fever. This is malaria. A day or so if he stays out in the sun too long. A day or so if you do as I am urging. You will have a worm digestives before purging with fumitory or with hellebore or other herbs that grow here by the score. With caper spurge or with the goat tree berry or ground ivy, found in our yard so merry, peck them just as they grow and eat them. Eat 'em. Be cheerful, husband. By your father's kin. Don't worry about a dream. I'm going to say no more. Madam, Chanticleer answered, thanks for all your lore, but still, to speak of Cato, though his name for wisdom has enjoyed so great a fame, and though he counseled us that there was no need to be afraid of dreams, by God, men read of many a man of more authority than this Don Cato could pretend to be, who in old books declare the opposite. And by experience, they've settled it, that dreams are omens and prefigurations, both of good fortune and of tribulations, that life and its vicissitudes present this question and leaves no room for argument. The very upshot makes it plain indeed. You know, one of the greatest authors that men read informs us that two fellow travelers went once upon a time, and with the best intent, upon a pilgrimage. And it fell out that they reached a town where there was such a rout, vicissitudes, I'm putting definitions here so that you can see them when we talk about this. There was such a rout of people and so little lodging space that they couldn't find even the smallest place. Now notice now, this is a story inside a story inside a story. But follow these narrators. This is Chanticleer talking, and he's arguing with one of the hens, one of his wives, about this Cato who said, don't pay any attention to dreams. He's going to give the counter-argument. They could not find even the smallest place where they could both be put up. So for that night, these pilgrims had to do as best as they might. And since they must, they parted company. Each of them went off to his hostelry, the inn, and took his lodging as his luck might fall. Among the plough oxen in a farmyard stall, one of them found the place, though it was rough. And his friend and fellow was lodged well enough, as luck would have it, or the destiny that governs us all creatures equally, as in so it happened long before the day he had a dream in his bed that he lay. He dreamed that his parted friend began to call and said, Alas, for in an oxen stall this night I shall be murdered where I lie. Come to my aid, dear brother, or I die. Come to me quickly, come in haste, his friend said. So he just started from his sleep, this man, for dread, but when he had awakened, he rolled back once more, and on this dream of his he set no store, so dismissing it as a vain thing and unconcerned. Twice he slept that night, the dream returned, and still another. For the third time his friend came in the dream and said, I have met my end. Look, my wounds, they are bloody deep and wide. And now rise early in the morning tide. And at the west gate of the town, he said, a wagon with a load of dung. You will see, have it arrested boldly. Do as bidden, for underneath the dung you'll find my body hidden. my money caused my murder, truth to tell," and told him each detail of how he fell, with piteous face and with bloodless hue, and no doubt about it, he found the dream come true. For on the morrow, as soon as it was day, to where his friend had lodged, he made his way. No sooner did he reach the ox's stall than for his fellow he began to call. Promptly the stableman replied and said, Your friend is gone, sir. He got out of bed and he left town as soon as the day began." At last, suspicion overtook this man. Remembering his dreams, he would not wait, but quickly went and found at the west gate, being driven to manure, a farm's land, as it might seem, a dung cart, close at hand, that answered the description every way, as you yourself had heard the dead man say. And he began to shout courageously for law and vengeance of this felony. "My friend was killed this very night. He lies flat in this load of dung with staring eyes, and I call on those who should keep rule and head the magistrates and governors. Here," he said, "alas, here lies my fellow done to death. Why on this tale should I waste further breath?" So, why on this tale? That's the Chanticleer talking again. "The people sprang and flung to the cart to grow, and in the middle of the dung they found the dead man, while his murder was still anew. O blessed God, thou art so true and just. Murder, though secret, even thou wilt betray. Murder will out, we will see day by day. Murder, so loathsome and abominable to God is, who is just and reasonable, that he will never suffer it to be concealed. Though it hide a year or two or three, murder will be found out. To this point it comes down." Promptly the magistrates who ruled the town seized the driver and put him to such pain that the stableman as well, that under strain of torture they were both led to confess, and they were hanged by the neck bone for their wickedness. Here's proof that dreams aren't things to dread. And in the same book, as I have also read, in the next chapter that comes after this. So here's another story and a story. "I don't speak idly by my hope of bliss. Two travelers who for some reason planned to cross the ocean to a distant land found that the wind, by an opposing fate, blew contrary, and they forced them both to wait in a fair city by the harbor side. So one day the wind changed toward evening, and it blew just as it suited them instead. So cheerfully these travelers went to bed, and they planned to sail the first thing in the morning. But one of them received a strange forewarning. A marvel it was, for while asleep he dreamed a curious dream. Along toward day, he dreamed that a man appeared at his bedside and told him, "Don't sail, wait, bide your time. Tomorrow," he told the man, "if you set sail, you shall be drowned. I've told you my whole tale." So he woke, and of this warning he told his friend, and he begged them to forget his voyage, and to wait that day and bide his friend, and bid his friend bide. His friend, who was laying close to his bedside, began to laugh and told him in derision, "I'm so flabbergasted by a vision," surprised, "as to put off my business for such a cause? I do not think your dream is worth 2 straws. For dreams are but a vain absurdity of apes and owls and many a mystery. People are always dreaming in a maze of things that never were seen in all their days, and never shall be. But I see it's clear you mean to waste your time by waiting here. I'm sorry for that, God knows. And so good day." And with this he took his leave, and he went his way. But not the half of his course had this man sailed, I don't know why, nor what it was that failed, but when by accident the hull of the boat was rent, and the ship and the man went to the water, went in full view of the vessels alongside that had put them out on the same tide. Now then, fair partlet, the hen, who I love so well, from old examples such as these, I tell, you'll see that none should give too little heed to dreams. In other words, you should believe your dreams. For I say seriously indeed that many a dream is too well worth our dread. Yes, in St. Kelm's life, and so St. Kelm we'll talk about, I think there's a footnote here someplace. There he is. St. Kelm was an Anglo-Saxon saint venerated throughout medieval England. And you can pause me and read that because there's notes all over here. Because now it's what? Bartlett's turn to talk. He was the son of Cynewulf, the king of Mercia. How this Kelm dreamed a thing. One day, at the time when he was killed drew near, he saw his murderer in a dream appear. His nurse explained his dream in each detail and warned him to be wary without fail of treason. And yet he was but 7 years old. And therefore any dream he could but hold of little weight. In a heart he was so pure, I'd give my shirt by God, you may be sure, if you had read his story through like me. Moreover, Partlet, I tell you, this is Chanticleer again, truthfully, Macrobius writes by his book, now he's citing all these books, right? These are really educated birds, aren't they? By his book, we know the African vision of great Scipio, confirming dreams, and holds that they may be forewarnings of events that men shall see. Again, I beg, look well at what is meant by Daniel's story in the Old Testament. Here's a note here. In the Old Testament, Daniel is known for his ability to interpret dreams. So you can see that these are well-educated birds and that the narrator is really, if you don't know who Daniel was and you don't read these stories and understand them, you lose some of the appreciation of what's going on here. Because what they're doing, ladies and gentlemen, is just talking about dreams, right? Whether he held that dreams are vanity. And you should also read about Joseph, another biblical character. You shall see that dreams, and some of them, I don't say all of them, they warn us of things that afterward befall. Think of the king of Egypt, Don Pharaoh, of his butler and of his baker. Think also whether they found that dreams have no result. Come on. Whoever will search through kingdoms and consult their histories reads many a wondrous thing of dreams. Well, what about Croesus, the Lydian king? Didn't he dream that he was sitting on a tree, which meant that he would be hanged? Andromache, the woman who was once great Hector's wife, when she came, she must lose her life. When the day came that he must lose his life, Hector, the very night before his blood was spilled, she dreamed of how her husband would be killed by Achilles. And if he went out to battle on that day, and she warned him, she begged him, and he would not heed nor stay. In spite of her, he rode out on the plain, and by Achilles he was promptly slain. But all that story is too long to tell here, and it is nearly day, and I must not dwell on this matter. But briefly in conclusion, I say this dream will bring me to confusion and mischief of some sort. And furthermore, as far as laxatives, I say, I set no store. For they are venomous. I'm sure of it. I don't trust them, and I'm not going to take one bite. So let's talk cheerfully and forget all this, my pretty Partlet. By my hope of bliss, in one thing God has sent me ample grace, for when I see the beauty of your face, you are so scarlet red about the eye, it's enough to make my terrors die. For just as true as in principio mulier e homios confusion, in the beginning a woman is the river of confusion, and madame, what this Latin means is this: woman is a man's whole comfort and true bliss. I don't think so. But these are smart birds, right? Feeling you soft at night, and I beside you, although it's true, alas, I cannot ride you. Because our perch is built so narrowly, I am then so full of pure felicity, intense happiness, that I defy whatever sort of dream. So the day being come, he flew down from the beam, and with him his hens fluttered one and all. And with a cluck cluck he began to call his wives to where a kernel had been tossed. He was a prince, his fears entirely lost, and before the morning reached the hour of prime, he'd trodden partlet for the 20th time. Grim as a lion, he strolled to and fro, strutting about well on either toe. He would not deign to set foot on the ground. Cluck, cluck, he said, whenever he had found a kernel, and his wives came running all, this royal as a monarch in his hall. I leave to his delights this Chanticleer. I leave, who's I? Right, that's the narrator, I. I leave to his delights this Chanticleer. And presently the sequel you shall hear. Remember who's narrating? It's the nun's priest. After a month in which the world began, the month of March when God created man had passed, and when the season had run through, since March came in just 30 days and 2, it happened that Chanticleer in all his pride, his 7 hens parading at his side, lifted his eyes, beholding the bright sun, which was in the sign of Taurus, had then run 21 degrees, somewhat more, and by instinct, not by learned lore, it was the hour of prime. Chanticleer raised his head, and he crowed with a loudly voice. "The sun," he said, 41 degrees and more in height, has climbed the sky. Partlet, my world's delight. Hear all of the birds, how happily they sing, and see the pretty flowers and how they spring with solace, and with joy my spirits dance. But suddenly he met a sore mischance, for in the end's joys ever turns to woes. For in the end, joys ever turn to woes. Put a little arrow there. Huh. Quickly the joys of earth are gone, God knows. And could a rhetorician's art indict it, he'd be on solid ground if he could write it. In Chronicle is true notoriously. Not every wise man, listen to me. This is a story as true as I'll undertake, as in the book of Lancelot of the Lake, on which the women set so great a store. Now, to my matter I will turn once more. That was a little sidebar by the nun's priest. You doing all right? You sticking with me? A sly, inquisitive fox with black-tipped ears, who had lived in the neighboring wood for some 3 years, his faded fancy swollen to a height, had broken through the hedges that same night into the yard, where in his pride sublime Chanticleer with his 7 wives passed the time. Quietly in a bed of herbs he lay, till it was past the middle of the day, and waiting his hour on Chanticleer to fall, as gladly do these murderers one and all, who lie in wait, concealed to murder men. O murderer, lurking traitors in your den! O new Icecrot, second Genyon, false prophet, Greek Sinon, who brought on the utter woe of Troy and all her sorrow. O Chanticleer, accursed be thou morrow, where to the yard you flew down from the beams that day, as you were well warned in your dreams, would threaten you with dire catastrophe. But that which God foresees must come to be, as there are certain scholars who aver, bear witness as any true philosopher, that in the schools there is great altercation. On this point there has been disputation. 100,000 scholars, man for man, there's arguments going on. I cannot sift down to the pure brand, as can the sacred doctor Augustine, so he also knows Christian theology. Boethius, and there should be a note about Boethius, he's a philosopher, or Bishop Brandywine, whether God's high foreknowledge so enchains me that I need must do as if it constrains me. whether God's high foreknowledge, his fate, so enchains me, if you're a victim of fate, that nothing I can do can change my fate. That's what they're saying here. Needs must, that is, by plain necessity, or whether free choice is granted me. This is a very important argument. Do I have freedom of choice, or is everything predetermined? To do it or not do it, either one, though God must know all things before they are done, that's a complex puzzle. Or whether his foresight nowise can constrain except contingently, as some explain. I will not labor such a high concern. My tale is of a cock, as you shall learn, who took his wife's advice to his own sorrow and walked out into that yard that fatal morrow. Women have many times, as wise men hold, offered advice that left men in the cold. A woman's counsel brought us first to woe, and out of paradise made Adam go, where he was living merrily and at ease. But since I don't know whom I may displease, by giving women's words an ill report, pass over it. I only spoke in sport. Books tell of it, that you can read or skim. You'll soon discover what they say of women. I'm telling you the cock's words, not mine. Harm in no woman at all can I divine. Happily bathing where the sand was dry, lay Partlet with her sisters all nearby, and Chanticleer, as regal as could be, he sang merrily as the mermaid in the sea. Physiologist, the bestiary declares truly that they can sing the merriest of airs, and so it happened, as he fixed his eye among the herbs upon a butterfly, he caught sight of the fox, who crouched there low. He felt no impulse then to strut or crow, but he cried, "Coo!" and gave a fearful start, like one who had been frightened to the heart. A beast by instinct, should he chance to see his opposite, at once desires to flee, even the first time that it meets his eye. This Chanticleer, no sooner did he spy the fox, than promptly enough he would have fled. "But where are you going, kind sir?" the fox said. Huh. Are you afraid of me, who am your friend? Truly, I'd be a devil from end to end if I should mean you harm or villainy. I have not come to invade your privacy. In truth, the only reason that could bring me this visit of mine was just to hear you sing. Beyond a doubt, you have a fine voice, as any angel who makes heaven rejoice. For feeling in your music you excel, Boethius or any who can sing well. My lord, your father once, and may God bless his soul, your noble mother too, no less, have been inside my house to my great ease. And verily, sir, I should be glad to please you also. But for singing, I declare, as I enjoy my eyes, that precious pair, I've never heard a man save you sing. As did your father when the night took wing, straight from the heart. In truth came all his song, to make his voice more resonant and strong. He'd strain until he shut his either eye, so loud and lordly would he make his cry, and stand up on his tiptoes therewithal, and stretch his neck until it grew long and small, and he had such excellent discretion too, that neither his singing all the regions through, or else wisdom no one could surpass. I read the tale in Don Bernal the Ass, in verse, of how once upon a time a cock was hit in the leg by a priest who threw a rock when he was young and foolish, and for this he caused the priest to lose his benefice, permanent church appointment. By no comparison in all truth lies between your sire, so prudent and so wise, and that shrewd cock, for all his subtlety. Sing, sir, show me, please, for your holy charity, if you can match your father, that wise man. That's pretty good speech for a fox, huh? What do you think? Blind to all treachery, Chanticleer began to beat his wings like one who cannot see the traitor, ravished by his flattery. Alas, you lords, about your court there slips many a flatterer with deceiving lips, who pleases more abundantly, I fear, than he who speaks the plain truth to your ear. Read in Ecclesiastes, and you will see what flatterers are. Lords, heed their treachery. So this Chanticleer stood tiptoe at full height. He stretched his neck, he shut his eyelids tight, and he began to crow a lordly note. And the fox, named Don Russell, seized him by the throat at once, and on his back bore Chanticleer off towards the den that in the grove stood near, for no one yet had threatened to pursue. O destiny, that no man may eschew! Alas, Chanticleer flew from the beams. Alas, Partlet took no stock in dreams, and on a Friday happened this mischance. Venus, whose pleasures make the world dance, since Chanticleer was ever your true servant, and your rights, with all his power observant, pardon me, for pleasure rather than to multiply, would you on Friday suffer him to die? Geoffrey, dear master of the poet's art, who, when your Richard perished by the dart, made for your king so elegy so burning, why have I not your eloquence and learning to chide as you did, with a heart so filled Fridays? For on a Friday he was killed. Then I should show you how I could complain for Chanticleer in all of his fright and pain. In truth, no lamentation ever rose, no shriek of ladies when before its foes Ilium fell, and Pyrrhus with blade blown had seized King Priam by his beard and made the end of him. And the Aeneid tells us, this is a great book, the Aeneid. I want you to read that sometime, perhaps with Jimmy. Such as the hens made their piteous wail in their enclosure, seeing the dreaded sight of Chanticleer. But at the shrillest height shrieked Partlet. She shrieked so loud that the wife of Hasbrul, the husband lost his life when Roman's hand burned Carthage, and her state of torment and of frenzy was so great that she willfully chose the fire for her part, leaped in and burned herself with steadfast heart when Carthage was burned by the Romans. Unhappy hens, you shrieked as when for pity when the tyrant Nero put its flames to city. These are all allusions to people who died, right? Nero. Of Rome rang out the shriek of the senators' wives because their husbands had lost their lives. This Nero put to death these innocent men, and I will come back to my tale again. These are little sidebars. So now this good widow and her daughters heard these woeful hens shriek. Now we got back to the widow. Remember the widow when we started the tale? And when the crime occurred, and sprang outdoors as quickly as they could, and she saw the fox, who was making for the wood, bearing Chanticleer across his back. Help! Help! They cried. Alas! Alack! The fox! And after him they ran. And armed with clubs came running many a man. Ran Cole the dog, and led a yelping band. Ran Macklin with the staff of her hand. Ran the cow and the calf, and even the hogs. All the animals, right? They all frenzied, barking dogs, and men and women shouting so terrified. They ran until their hearts would burst inside. They squealed like fiends in the pit, with none to still them, and the ducks quacked as if the men were going to kill them. The geese for very fear over the trees. Out of the beehive came a swarm of bees, and bless my soul, that noise. By all that's true, so hideous was the jackstraw's retinue. Made never a hubbub that was half so shrill over a Fleming that they were going to kill, and the people that day over the fox. They brought brass trumpets made of box, of horn, of bone, on which they blew and squeaked, and those who were not blowing, they whooped and shrieked. It seemed as if the very heavens would fall. Now hear me, you good people, one and all. Fortune, I say, will suddenly override her enemy, and his very hope and pride. This cock, as on the fox's back he lay, he plucked up his courage to say and speak to him and say, God, be my help, sir, but I tell them all, that is, if I were you, plague on you, fall. Go back, proud fools. Now that I've reached the wood, I'm going to eat this cock at once, for all good. Your noise can do. Here, Chanticleer shall stay. Fine, said the fox. I'll do just what you say. The cock, as he was speaking, suddenly out of the jaws lurched expeditiously. Because what happened? Fine, said the fox. I'll do just what you say. He talks, and Chanticleer lets go of Chanticleer. And he flew at once high into the tree. And when the fox saw that the cock was free, alas, he said, alas, O Chanticleer, so far I have given you cause for fear by seizing you and bearing you away. I've done you wrong, I'm prepared to say. But, sir, I did it with no intent. Come on down. I'm going to tell you what I meant, so come on down. It's truth that I'll offer you. No, no, said he. We're both fools, through and through. But curse my blood and bones for the chief dunce if you deceive me often more than once. That's a famous saying, right? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. You'll never again by flattery persuade me to sing and wink my eyes by him that me. For he that wilfully winks when he should see, God never bless him with prosperity. Ah, said the fox, with mischief may God greet the man ungoverned, rash and indiscreet, who babbles when he's told to hold his tongue or needful. Such it is to be reckless and unheedful and trust in flattery. There's the lesson. But you who hold that this is just a mere trifle that I have told, concerning only a fox or a cock or a hen, think twice. And take the moral, my good men. For truly, of whatever is written, all is written for our doctrine, says St. Paul. Then take the fruit and let the chaff lie still. Now, gracious Lord, let the chaff lie still. Now, gracious Lord, if you should be by your will, as my Lord teaches, make us all good men and bring us to your holy bliss. Amen. Wow. Epilogue to the Nun's Priest's Tale. Sir Chaplain, said our good host, by St. Paul's, a blessing on your breeches and your balls. This was a merry tale of Chanticleer. But on my word, if you were secular, you'd make a cock to tread the hens all right. If with your strength you have the appetite, you need some hens, according to my view. 17, I think, would be too few. Look at the sinews of this gentle priest. What a big neck he has, and what a span of a chest, and his peers round like a sparrowhawk in the eye. His cheeks need no Brazil wood for a dye, or Coca's crane brought in Portugal. Now, sir, good luck with you for your tale. After this, with his usual good cheer, our host spoke to another, as you shall hear. So he was talking, he said he liked the tale. There's a note here by Theodore Morrison. To what other pilgrim the host spoke is impossible to determine. Chaucer may have been laying groundwork for the link that he did not live to write. The next group of stories presented here is not explicitly linked to any of the other Canterbury tales, but the group makes a coherent sequence within itself. G.L. Kidd, another scholar, viewed it as a panel interrupted by a comic play. So this is a scholarly comment that we don't have to worry about. What do you think? You've been reading with Jimmy. That was the Nun's Priest's Tale about Chanticleer, the rooster, the cock, and the hens and the fox and flattery and lots of things that we're going to analyze when we talk about this story. Thanks for coming by. You've been reading with Jimmy. Learn more about Chaucer's Canterbury Tales on this website. You can read a lot of different stories and novels on my website. I'm glad you're here. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. You got a comment, critique, question? Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Any questions? And thanks so much for commenting. And remember, the next time you hear a rooster crowing, remember the story. They're still around, these roosters.